Hi everybody. So we have about we have a full house here with more than 35 people online, and we have Justin over here, CEO of Corporate Tour. It's a beautiful company based out of a beautiful city. That's Vancouver in Canada. Justin is one of the leading players around the B2B logistics, and right now his customers demand a lot more from him. And he's in a pretty interesting place where he's using some of the new age technology methods to work on his supply chain. The consumer demands over the last 5 years have been changing with the e-commerce coming in, the expectations, and his business is under tremendous growth pressure. That's a good problem to always have. And I'm Nishit, founder at Locus. Locus is a decision-making engine in supply chain. Uh, we build technology to automate human decisions that are required to transport a package from any point A to any point B. Basically, building systems like geocoding, route optimization, load optimization to effectively play the role of an algorithmic supply chain officer. With that, I would like to open the house for any questions. Guys, you have a chat screen on your right. Do feel free to type in any questions. Participate in the poll. It could be a question that you have in your mind or anything about that we are discovering. Justin, you there? So that's actually I think we just lost Justin on the internet, and that's actually one of the key problems that we would also be discussing today. That logistics is a real world problem. It it does not operate in spherical chickens in vacuum. What I mean by that is that when you're working in logistics, you have to, on a day-on-day basis, while automating a real-world problem, face processes exactly like this, where the internet is not available or it is patchy. Now imagine your driver's doing a delivery and they want to collect a proof of delivery. And if this is happening near the elevator of the building, that's where your customer is, but it does not have the proof of delivery already into the system, right? So can you operate in patchy internet? Can you operate with incorrect addresses? And that's what is one of the key things about automating logistics. So we have Justin back here. Justin, I was just mentioning to the audience that this is exactly how supply chain works. It's a real world system where things go wrong all the time, and both the technology as well as the processes have to adapt to that. With that, welcome you
Exactly.
on.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Great. So Justin, I would like to open the house by asking you that, what are some of the key difference in expectations you're seeing from consumers? Like, you have business clients, and over the last 5 years, what are the new things that they have been asking from your business? And what are some of the trends over there, right from the horse's mouth?
I mean, clearly the first expectation that people are seeing is they want deliveries done faster. It needs to be a much speedier process. And do they have transparency? Can they really track and have the visibility on their product right from manufacturer all the way through to consumer? I think those are probably the two of the biggest. I would add in reporting capabilities. I think to have dashboards and reporting capabilities that can give real-time information on what's being done, how quickly it's being done, what's left to do, etc., in one easy place, I think is going to be is very valuable and a selling feature. Those are a couple of them.
Absolutely. So you bring up very key points: efficiency, visibility, and reporting. And I think on the first point, that is that now the delivery windows are being shortened. That everybody is looking towards moving to express deliveries or on-demand deliveries. Do you see a lot of on-demand business these days as compared to 5 years back or 3 years back? And how does it impact your operational processes?
We're seeing a decline in the traditional on-demand business that you would expect, which is, lawyers to lawyers, accountants, that type of business, because everything's gone paperless and contracts can be signed virtually. We're seeing a decline there, but we're seeing a big uptick in e-commerce on-demand business. Customers want to purchase clothing or goods, and they're making decisions at the till based on how quickly that product can get to their house. which is a major shift in the sales process for these big box retailers. All of a sudden, delivery and final mile is becoming the decision maker for their customers. So all of a sudden, they're paying a lot more attention to it.
That's a very interesting point. Like many of us would not have actually thought about, an on-demand business prior to the e-commerce age. That there was a huge B2B on-demand business between, the, as you mentioned, the lawyers to lawyers and the accountants to accountants. Uh, right. So combining the whole visibility and reporting piece. So do you feel that having a like is there a churn in your workforce that significantly impacts your efficiency and visibility, or these are more process dependent things and independent from workforce? Like, how does the quality of workforce affect your efficiency, visibility, and reporting measures? So definitely not the reporting, but it's at least the efficiency and visibility.
Well, I think what you see with efficiently run operations and the backbone of all transportation companies is technology. And if you have efficient technology, what it does is it efficiently routes your drivers, better, dispatches quicker, etc. And therefore, the drivers make more money. And if the drivers make more money, you get a better quality candidate. And that is really a big selling feature for investing in technology. Because if you can get better quality candidates on the road making that final mile delivery, when they do come to situations where they have to make human decisions, you have people who are more qualified to make those, better decisions.
That's that's a very unique tangent to, like, everybody always thinks about efficiency primarily for the customers, but here what you mention is that actually efficiency helps you recruit better drivers, which in turn, so it forms actually a vicious cycle. And on this point, I would just like to elaborate on this, that so traditionally there have always been technologies and softwares which answer a part of the question. So for example, if you're a furniture delivery company, there are, you would have gotten the answer that if there are 100 furnitures and 10 trucks, how to do that. But that is not your real world problem. So your real world problem is far more complex. Your real world problem is more like, if there are 100 furnitures, I don't know the number of trucks to use. This is my cost contract for a 7-ton vehicle. This is my cost contract for a 14-ton vehicle. What is the best combination of vehicles to use? While doing that, to remember that 27 of the furniture items are heavy furnitures like a bed and sofa, which need a service associate to assemble it. So routing them in a way that the least number of unique trucks have all the heavy furnitures, while factoring in the city traffic and the fact that there are only 2 loading bays. Each loading bay has just 15 minutes of loading bay time. So the 9th truck leaves 1 hour 15 minutes after the first, changing both the initial dispatch time and the traffic conditions, right? And if you don't have software sophisticated enough to answer the whole puzzle, you basically answer a part of the puzzle, which then get added by business constraints, either by the management or the consultants, but effectively making your supply chain very static. You will now update your routes only once in 6 months or once in a year, which, as Justin initially mentioned, that today, because everybody wants faster deliveries, you don't have the luxury to wait long enough to have full truckloads along your static cycles. You need to constantly, dynamically keep optimizing your supply chain, both on a daily and maybe if you're engaging in an on-demand business, even on an hourly or a per minute basis. So there needs to be a lot of real-time decision making that needs to go into your supply chain. On that note, Justin, I would like to segue into a critical point that you mentioned about recruiting. Um, how difficult do you find it to recruit people who have the local domain knowledge of that area? Like, how easy it is to, say, for example, recruit just a driver as compared to a driver who knows specifically about that geography? And is there even a difference in remuneration and the ability to retain?
It's very difficult to recruit any driver. Never mind getting experienced drivers. It's almost impossible. There's just so much. I mean, especially in my market here in Western Canada, it's just so competitive. We used to put ads out in the local newspapers and online, and we would get 100, 200 recipients for driving positions. And today we put an ad out every single day, regardless of if we need someone or not, and we may get one a week applicants. So it's very, very difficult, and which is why finding the right technology that can make you more efficient, which allows you to pay your drivers more money, allows you to survive.
Exactly. So even one of our audience members, Shaktival, mentions that point that now logistics operation is a very unique set of sub-organization in the company. If you have your accounting practices, if you have your engineering practices, all of that, there is a huge amount of documentation available. There's a systematic concept of knowledge transfer. But in logistics, there is an insane amount of tribal knowledge. It always, exists in the head of the people. So what machine learning can do over here, that now if you think about it, route optimization is a combinatorial problem. It's a problem which is different part of the data science world. But machine learning and artificial intelligence is a classification problem. It basically means that it can observe from some behavior and learn from it. So what it does is that when your drivers are operating on a day on day basis, it can keep observing their behavior, that whether they take a certain bridge or not, whether they stop at a certain start of the day coffee point or not, whether they take lunch breaks at a certain point, what is the address to a lat long that they typically deliver in. And all these observations can then be learned from your execution and be put as a feedback into the system. And that's a key way machine learning completes this loop, because everybody thinks about like machine learning is like a buzzword and it's being applied to everything, but how does it actually applies to the logistics and operation? So one of the key ways that it applies to the operations is always that it can it can absorb all the tribal knowledge in your operations, in your execution, and start documenting it implicitly without inside the system. If it does that, then it can start factoring it while doing your planning. This basically drastically reduces your need to hire any knowledge specific workforce, which can be important especially in an environment where even just recruiting any drivers are hard. So yeah, that's actually how we.
I think what you're saying, Nishith, is if you can have machine learning and artificial intelligence identify patterns and be able to predict where demand is going to be based on historical information, then you can allocate and move resources in advance of that demand coming to fruition, and you can be prepared with infrastructure in place to support the needs of the customer.
Exactly. So 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 somebody mentioned that documents are not so as you digitize your supply chain, one of the key things that you can also do is electronic proof of delivery. Justin, in your experience, have consumers been asking about it, or are they typically sufficient with paper? Like how important is proof of deliveries, and what are some of the new methods?
It's absolutely critical. To have the proof of delivery signature required is mandatory on many of our customers' accounts. We wouldn't have that business if we couldn't offer electronic proof of delivery. It's now gone beyond that, in my opinion. It was barcode scanning and electronic proof of delivery. I think there's still room for RFID and new technologies, just because of the number of products that are coming through. To have complete transparency and visibility is absolutely critical.
Interesting. So delivery is like almost a mandatory requirement. And so another point over there is like, our drivers, how do you train your drivers towards it? Like every time there is a new request for it, like how does it go about, and are there any critical metrics that you track?
You have to. It has to be included in the technology. It has to force the driver to complete the delivery, and in the process of completing that delivery, he has to get a proof of delivery. He has to either get a signature or a barcode scan, depending on the customer. So it has to be set up within the technology so that the driver can't complete the trip without it. And if he can't complete the trip, the trip doesn't get rated and the driver doesn't get paid, etc. So it's part of, you have to incentivize him as part of his process in order for him to get that information.
No, I agree. I think even when this to you in the early days for use at corporate couriers. Demonstrating the proof of delivery in the app was a key part, of our sales pitch. And one of our viewers, Rohit, has an interesting question, and this is something we have discussed for many months. As a matter of fact, even in our implementation plans with you, I think that is where a lot of that's where a lot of brainstorming has gone. That how do you bring in technology and manage the change management while doing a live business? Like you're running, so when you're implementing a new technology, you as a running business do not have the luxury to stop it and then put in the technology and insert it. So while adopting any piece of technology, like how much focus do you think of course we have mutually discussed it many times, but for the audience, would you like to take a couple of minutes and talk about the importance of change management while implementing a technology?
Yeah, it's critical, because if you don't get it right, the business stops running, and if the business stops running, the customers very quickly go elsewhere, and they won't come back. So it's absolutely critical that you manage the change well. A lot of the work has to be done up front. Historically, it's running dual systems for a period of time until you can get comfortable that everything's working. I think our experience with Locus, for example, has been really positive. I think that the onus has been on Locus, because small business owners don't have the ability, the intellect, the time, or the resources to be able to adopt new technology while maintaining and growing their existing business.
Yeah, thanks. So there's one question over there from Suroj about what are the diligent ways to reach delivery on time. So, Saroj and the rest of the audience, so today there is sufficient amount of technology available which can make your consumer grade mobile phones into enterprise grade GPS devices. So businesses and technology platforms like Locus basically provide apps which are multilingual. So no matter which region you're operating in, so for example, in North America, you would typically have your app available in English, French, and Spanish that your drivers can use. This becomes like a communication medium. So it's effectively Uberizing your fleet. So each of your drivers effectively has a Uber-like app that you typically see while taking an Uber. This app constantly beams its location. Then intelligent systems at the server match this location with the supposed task that you have to do. So if at this time you're supposed to be doing this task, then are you located over there? It also brings in anti-fraud measures. What I mean by that is, for example, the drivers have the ability to say a customer is not at home. Now, this is an important, point of concern typically in the operations, where the customer says, hey, I was at home, but I did not get the delivery. Drivers say that I went to the home and the customer was not at home, right? But what can happen is that in the app, because now you know where the customer home is, you know where the driver is, the option by the driver to mark that the customer is not at home, it gets enabled only once the driver say reaches within a 200-meter radius of home. So this visibility also helps not in just real-time monitoring, but also in preventing intelligent anti-fraud, right? Another of our readers, Sukin, mentions that can proof of delivery be done with IoT devices attached to the package, right? So Justin initially in the conversation had mentioned about RFID. So, and there is another question over here that are low value items customers demanding signature as well. So I'm going to combine both of these questions, right? So proof of delivery can have several methods. One is taking a photograph. One is collecting a signature on the mobile device of the delivery boy. Third is having a one-time password. And fourth is actually scanning an RFID thing, which is tagged onto the package to be delivered and has a matching code on the mobile device. Now, these methods are split exactly as Nicole mentions based on the value of the goods. Now, a signature is a completely electronic thing, and that can be demanded even for low value. It is basically more of a proof of transaction and a handshake over, really an authentication problem that somebody else would be doing the signature, right? Because in low value items, you're effectively doing a handshake and just closing out the loop. But in high value items, along with proof of delivery, you also want to have an authentication. So every high value, so a typical RFID chip cost a few tens of cents to a dollar at maximum, depending on the range and kind. So if you're shipping a very high value good for which you're charging probably a few tens or hundred of dollar to deliver it, then you can have a matching RFID tag, and the mobile app of the driver can read that RFID, and while completing that authentication, could also completing that proof of delivery, also do that authentication. So, just to take a break there and moving more from the moving more to the business side of things rather than the technology, like when you're looking to get either use machine learning or the technology is more as a tool rather than the end goal. The end goal is improvements in the business, right? So while you mentioned about efficiency, visibility, and reporting, what are, on a day on day basis as a business owner, the key KPIs you look at, like say how many deliveries are being done by my drivers, or in general, what are, like, the 3 4 important metrics that you look in your business that give you the.
Well, the number one for me is OTP, which is on time percentage. So when a customer places an order, we give them an expectation of when that delivery will be completed, or they pay for an expectation of when that delivery will be completed, and that's the most important metric that we can have, because that tells us right away, are we satisfying our customers' needs. And then from there, we can really drill down on that OTP report into a granular level to see, is it OTP by driver? How has each individual driver performed? OTP by channel or by dispatch or geographic area. So to me, that's probably the most important metric in our business in terms of are we servicing our customers? Of course, revenue per trip, those types of reports and financials are critical as well. But OTP to me is the most important metric that we use.
Absolutely. You mentioned that, at that place to calculate the ETA, you need to do that while even acquiring the order, not just fulfilling the order, right? Like whether you can service that order or not, if you have that information available while acquiring. So today, what technology for the audience, what technology allows you to do is that while you are capturing the order, at the point of order capture itself, you can predict at, during the time of fulfillment, what would be the state of your supply chain using various technologies, and in that state of supply chain, what would be the estimated time of completion of this order, and you can show it to the customer, and either the customer can accept that, or if the customer wishes, they can even pay for a further priority. And this allows both customers to get their deliveries as they expect, and businesses to optimize their resources. So Justin, how do you think about opening, like, a new warehouse or a new location to meet your demand? Like what kind of calculations typically, like, or what kind of, like who in your team gets involved in that, and where that decision is, like, and what are the typically the factors around it?
I think we do manage by committee at my company. We really have an open environment. We really bring on, we want a diverse culture, and we want people with different opinions to come to the table when we're making big decisions. I think for me, one of the most important criteria when I'm making investment decisions or big decisions like that is, is it going to keep us light and adaptable? And I think that's a really critical question that we have to consistently ask ourselves, because the industry is changing so dynamically and so quickly. We don't want to be caught heavily invested in buildings and things that we can't pivot and move from quickly. We want to be able to adapt and plug into great technologies as they become available, and be able to grow, sustain our growth because of that. So that to me is really important. Obviously, is it efficient? Is it profitable? Is it going to give me more market share? Those are the types of questions that I ask. But initially, I think the first one I would ask is it light, and is it adaptable?
That's a very key factor in picking up a technology for your business, not just in logistics, but any, this typically basically speaks of your experience, that no matter how good a piece of technology is, you should always consider that how modular it is, how easy will it be to expand further or build things on top of it. So typically these days, if a technology is API driven, it's good, because this means it can play with your existing set, as well as you will have the ability to expand it further. So while Justin, you briefly mentioned about actually technology being helpful for the drivers to increase their daily revenue, and in turn being able to recruit better, I would like you to further expand on the fact that many shop level workers or drivers are fearing that technology will take away their jobs. Do you actually see a reverse trend around that? Just before you go, I would also like to, drive the attention of all our viewers and audience to the poll section. So on your top right, next to the questions, there is a poll tab, guys. There are a few questions out there. Do put in your feedback. These polls are created both by the organizers as well as some of the audience members. So you will have a further pulse of the crowd, that what do your peer thinks about it. So yeah. So coming back, Justin, in your experience, what have you been hearing from your drivers in the team? Like, is technology helping them earn more revenue, or they are looking at it as a fear of losing, or is it a mix of both?
I think it's a mix of both, and I think even with business owners, I think there's a real mix of emotions on as to what's coming down the pipeline. Is our drones and automated vehicles going to come and take all of our business away, or are those new technologies going to help us reduce our costs and grow our business? Is really the debate. And I'm a believer that if you are light and you are adoptable and you do have a good core technology that you can pivot from quickly, you'll be able to take advantage of those technologies and grow your business. But so I do think it's a very mixed feelings out there right now.
Yeah. And talking about drones, how do you think about them personally?
I think they'll probably have a place. I'm a little bit more skeptic probably than most. They're definitely, servicing remote areas is extremely challenging, and I think they are already being valuable, servicing those type of areas and remote islands and things like that. When you get to your core major metropolitan cities, I don't think they're going to really affect a lot of the business that we're doing.
That's a brilliant point. I personally, even I'm super excited about them. And when I go out, hiking or something, I like to use drones to capture some aerial footage. But at this point, in terms of industrial application, one of the one of the areas I see them being applied in a fruitful manner is access to remote areas, and especially like there for medical deliveries or blood sample collections, because in often there are not even direct roads, and instead of going through kilometers or miles of winding road, you can have a straight line distance in the rural areas. But I remain a skeptic as well about the use of aerial drones in metro areas. There has been some progress around the surface bots, but I don't see a lot of deliveries being happen, and I've been closely following even the regulation as well as the technology development around this. So applying aerial drones to metro area deliveries, I'm not very confident of that being a very potentially advanced area. But definitely rural is one place that I see a lot of application of the same. On that, have you talking and just closing the loop on all the buzzwords in technology, have you heard from your customers, not from the media, but have you heard from your customers about the use of blockchain and supply chain?
I haven't heard from our customers. I find that the customers are often, you'll get some very forward thinking customers who do drive the change, but most of the customers are reactive to our change. So I think it's the business owners that will drive the change, and the private enterprise to be able to get a competitive advantage to offer that type of technology and educate often customers on what that blockchain technology will be able to do for their business.
Yeah, so that brings up 2 points. One, that so blockchain for our audience is a way to basically immutably store your data across a decentralized system. The problem in supply chain is not that there wasn't any current way to change your data without destroying it. The problem is that there wasn't enough data being generated. and that is first being solved by adoption of mobile phone as GPS devices or RFIDs or several IoT. So the first layer of any logistics company in the business is to ensure that enough and accurate data is being generated through each part of the value chain, not the storage and decentralizing of it. And at the same time, the second part, which is even more important, that it's not the customers who would always, like it's like, when Henry Ford said that if I would have asked my consumers what they want, they would have told me a faster horse carriage. It's actually the owners of the it's actually the owners of the business owner to be, adaptable to technology, but be aware of that technology and also to educate the consumers about it. So for example, if you have implemented EPOD, there's a very good chance there are a lot of your consumers who may not know about it or they may require it, but they may not know that such things exist. Like a key example of this is serviceability. Like many of your consumers may not know that, you know, uh, while placing an order itself, they have the option to, know whether they, if they can have so a lot of their orders do not need to be urgent, so they can actually deprioritize and save costs there. But a lot of their orders can be urgent, so they can pay a bit extra, but ensure very, very high efficient times towards that, right? So it's an important part of, your sales itself. It's actually one of the best way to build and gain more clients, that being abreast of the new technologies, adopting it into your business, and then further going and educating your customers about it. So, Justin, what's your typical way of getting to know about these? Like, when we met you, we were very surprised to know that, here we had a very educated customer already, and you had a very specific demands about what you wanted from your business. And so do you typically like, is it that it comes through blogs, or you're in generally aware, or is it peer discussions? Like, how does among the logistics companies and their business owners information spreads?
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of avenues. I think for sure blogs. I listen to a number of podcasts from industry leaders. It's going to events, trade shows, networking events, and just being generally aware of what these big technology companies that are trying to build automated vehicles and try to build drones. Following them, understanding what stage they're at. And really just being generally aware. I think it comes from a number of different channels.
Sure. So one key takeaway there, guys, is podcast. That's something that not many of us think about. At the first line of information gathering, we typically always blogs and events. But today, both on Android and iPhone, there are really good podcast apps available, and there is really good content. So if you guys are doing your morning commute, think about it as an alternative way to listen. Things to listen to apart from the typical audio and music. Uh, one question for you, Shashank, from Justin from our audience, Shashank, that a lot of industries face seasonality in demand, right? That say maybe during the Q4 there is higher demand, or during certain seasons there is lack of demand. How do you deal with it operationally?
It's very, very challenging. Even if we know, for example, at Christmas that we're going to get absolutely flooded with orders, the spike is only for, and same thing with tax season. Historically, the spike is only for a few days. Our volumes jump 40%. It's very difficult to hire temporary staff for 2 or 3 days, train them for a month, and let them work for 2 or 3 days during peak to service those customers, and then have to let them go after that period of time. So it's a very difficult to service during those peak seasons, or the ebbs and flows of traditional business. I think you just have to be very clear with your communication to the customer, and very clearly lay out their expectations at the time of ordering, which a lot of technologies can't do and don't do yet. But I think if you can, I think as long as the customer knows, and right up front when they're placing the order, what to expect, they're going to be more reasonable, or they're going to be more understanding, or they're going to pay for a higher priority of service.
Very good point that often a customer doesn't mind waiting, but it is the uncertainty that really annoys the customer. So do you know that the elevators, so when basically in post 1937, when we had the first skyscraper, there used to be, we had the first set of elevators, and people found the experience of elevators very unpleasant because that waiting was very awkward, and that's where they started putting up mirrors in the elevators so that people have something to look at while they are waiting to get to their floors. So yeah, keeping the customer busy, keeping updated about the ETA, having reasonable expectation settings definitely goes a long way in them behaving far more reasonable, and they being far more rational about the waiting point. And the second thing, as you mentioned, and as we priorly also discussed, that you sometimes do need to get some of the workforce which are going to be there from in your company on a temporary basis, and at that point it becomes ultra critical to have good technology processes which has created standardized operating procedures, both in terms of technology as well as operations, so that these new hires can also be seamlessly plugged out into the operations. So we're in the last 3 to 4 minutes of our session. It has been great speaking to you today. We discussed a lot of things about how efficiency, visibility, reporting, proof of deliveries are becoming important today in the business, and how adoption of technology, right from intelligent order allocation, which is driving efficiency, to dashboarding, which is driving the reporting, and GPS enabled mobile apps, which drives visibility into your operations, is not only helping you run a smoother business, but is also helping you acquire more and more customers by offering them these services and educating them. Any closing remarks from your side, Justin, that you would like for the audience members?
No, I don't think so. I think, the only one that we haven't really touched on, which I think is important, is dynamic, pricing changes. I think having the technology that can adjust and based on volumes and, whether it's traffic or weather, to be able to, have dynamic pricing changes and adjust the pricing, and also be able to prioritize, your key accounts and large accounts. That type of technology is extremely valuable.
So, are you saying that each of your customers, based on their, based on their priority, like how granular would you like to offer the pricing? Like, I understand that, different demands, different pricing, but typically how granular would it be to have an optimal business process?
Well, I think it's critical. If you have a customer that on average, spends $50,000 a month with you, and you have a customer that spends $200 a year with you, and the driver has a delivery for each on board, to be able to prioritize that bigger customer is absolutely critical, and make sure that the driver's aware of that. And if it means charging the smaller customer a significantly larger fee for that delivery, then that's also, similar to the surge pricing with Uber. When you don't have the resources available, you have to pay for those critical deliveries.
All right, that's great. So on that note, thanks Justin for joining in. Thanks for all our audience members to join in. It was really good talking to you, and thanks for taking the time, during your break, Justin. Really appreciate that. I think it was a great session. I learned a lot of new things. There's been some great feedback from the audience member as well. And thank you guys, everybody, for joining. My email ID personally is on your screens, which is nr@locus.sh. If you guys are ever in Canada and need a delivery service, please do look at Corporate Couriers. They're an amazing service with extremely high customer satisfaction and a lot of repeat customers. So again, just to repeat, corporatecouriers.net. A simple Google around Corporate Couriers will take you to their landing page. Do have a look at them, and would love to answer any of your questions further, even after this session, on my email. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for having me. Bye now.
Bye.